Oi, oi, oi. Welcome, lads. Testing 1, 2, 3. Can you guys hear me?
All good, Scoop. How's it going?
Good.
Bill up.
Awesome. Vickers, are you alive?
Yeah, all good, bro.
Kofi, are you good?
Yeah, mate. All good.
Silence is golden. Enda, are you good there?
All good, mate.
Fantastic. Sisa will jump on while we continue. So I'm not going to waste any time, gents. Welcome. Thanks once again for joining us. We're going to hit things straight away without wasting any time. Obviously, there's been a lot of chatter around Eddie Jones telling the All Blacks to be careful in his post-match analysis or review, a post-match conference as well. So there's a lot of talking points. We're going to start off with the Springboks, looking at dissecting what transpired yesterday in Auckland, and then move on to the Wallabies and Argentina. Big surprise, big shock in New South Wales. So obviously looking at that as well. The guys get a break this week, so which is good. Obviously we also going to look at, the type of things that might take place during this time off, and then it's Australia against the All Blacks into the following week. And obviously we'll look into and try and tap into those into that aspect as well. Gentlemen, without wasting any time, reflecting on yesterday's game, I'm just gonna ask around what your guys' thoughts are, and then dive into maybe the nitty-gritty aspects of it. Just basically give me a few pointers of what you thought went well, what you thought didn't go well. And are you the first one on my list? What are your thoughts on the overall game from yesterday between the Springboks and the All Blacks?
Well, I think I'll start off by saying that I got this one wrong anyway in my prediction. I said that the Springboks would win by between 5 and 10, so got to hold my hand up there.
Yeah.
But to be honest, the All Blacks I think we've all probably seen comments on Twitter about it and read articles about it. They just absolutely dominated those first 20 minutes. And that's what won the game for me. And to be honest, I know we brought it up probably last week when we were discussing the All Blacks. You really have to look at like Joe Schmidt now and his influence. It's definitely more palpable now.
Yeah.
When he was in charge of Ireland, and you could see this in the game yesterday, they absolutely dominated possession, quick ruck ball, very few penalties. I think the box actually can also the kicks as well. Like when he was in charge of Ireland, we kicked an awful lot. Same as the All Blacks yesterday, they kicked 28 times versus Springboks, who only kicked 14 times. As I said, penalties, only conceded 8 penalties, won 96% of their own rucks. So I think, we're starting to really see the impact that Joe Schmidt is having on this side. And to me, that's one of the reasons why they definitely won yesterday was that impact that he's having. We're really starting to see that now. Yeah,
fantastic. The reason why I also started with you on this is because you from Ireland, obviously you've seen the influence of Joe Schmidt and what he has achieved with the Irish team. And obviously now Farrell has taken over, obviously putting bits and pieces here and there of his own philosophy. And are you seeing a bit of that now within this All Black side? But how sustainable is it? To blitz first 20 and then you don't go away per se, but I mean, how can teams maintain that for a full 80 in terms of that blitz aspect?
Yeah, see, I think that's certainly the issue. But I think, like, if you all remember back to a couple of years ago when Ireland first beat the All Blacks in Chicago, that massive win, we really kind of put that game away from the outset because we played with such Ireland. I know I'm saying we a lot, but Ireland played with such high intensity from the get go, and they built up such a strong enough lead that the All Blacks just simply couldn't come back.
Yeah.
So I think it's all about you can't, like, you simply can't sustain it. I don't think for 80 minutes that kind of intensity. But what you can do is put teams away. Yeah. And make sure you're racking up the scoreboard, and I think that's exactly what they did. And let's be honest, like, it wasn't just the first 20 minutes; they did play well for the rest of the game as well. Like, we know with Springboks had their spells as well, but I think it's all about just building that scoreboard pressure. Yep. And that's what I saw while Schmidt was in charge, and I think that's how the All Blacks can continue to do this going forward. And
nice, yeah.
Yeah, we'll see.
Scoreboard pressure, very important. Vickers, what are your thoughts looking at that game yesterday?
Good afternoon, guys. Yeah, I think Anders pointed out perfectly. I think that first 20 minutes was pretty much evident that New Zealand wanted to blow South Africa off the game. And if you notice, even when they were their exit kicks was different. They were catching the ball with the winger, running into contact, and playing the forwards one more phase, and then kicking onto Mapimpi's side. So, and putting pressure on them, because, I mean, Will Jordan is good in the air, so I would just suspect that they wanted to keep the ball and give him the chance of regaining that possession. Yeah, I think also, and in saying that, so which means now, if South Africa had won that ball, they would have had to attack from there. They wouldn't have kicked. They probably would attack a couple of phases. Yeah. So which would be another draining, energy draining attack or play, because that's the only thing they wanted to do. They wanted to make sure that South Africa doesn't get that opportunity of slowing down the line-outs, walk into the line-out, get the line-out, drive. So they wanted to take that away for that first 20 minutes, and I think they did it brilliantly. I mean, the scrumming also was quite in that first half was good by New Zealand. They still played Channel 1 ball, but they were keeping it depending on how the pressure was coming. Yeah. So I think overall, I think New Zealand tactically into that game went the right way. I would love to see if that's going to when we play them in Twickenham. When we play them in Twickenham in one of those warm-up games. I think it's a warm-up game. Yeah. Yeah. So I think overall, I mean, New Zealand were outstanding, and South Africa, for me, they could have that second half coming out of the blocks in the second half. Counter-racking, blowing the racks, trying to slow the game down. That was also brilliant by South Africa, but obviously it was almost like one of those where almost a little bit too late. Although we did make our way back into the game. For some reason, I feel we missed Eskom in this game. I think he would have been instrumental if he started this game.
True. Kofi, your overall outlook?
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Hope everyone is having a beautiful Sunday. I think my overall outlook is how I saw it on Friday as well, 15, 20 points to the All Blacks, which is what actually transpired. It came out the gate really quickly. And, at some stage, I think when Colby kicked that conversion or attempted conversion and it hit the post, I think the Springboks would have been 6 behind at that stage. Just one score behind, effectively. Yeah. And when he missed that, I thought that in itself was a momentum shift, So I like the way that Fozzie in his post-match conference spoke about ebbs and flows and how those ebbs and flows in that game, which were completely evident, how they managed to, take that pressure onto him and then, give the pressure when they had the ball. I completely agree with what Bravik mentioned with regards to the exit. I think the exit strategy generally, when teams play against South Africa, they like to exit, to the near side, whereas the All Blacks would play a phase, get the ball to the middle of the field almost, and then look to exit towards the side where they actually wouldn't put the 8th man. So you generally have, Dwayne Vermeulen or Visa, who are quite good under the high ball and able to bring that ball back before South Africa obviously get into counter attack / kicking game, if you have that. I thought it was quite disappointing. The use of Damian Willemse at 10. I thought that he could have been better utilized in that position, but we'll get obviously onto that a little bit more as we take the conversation further. But very nice start from the All Blacks. Nice to see them being able to nullify what the Boks can do, but also present what they are good at as well. So, it was a nice game to see. Would have been interesting if there were a couple of changes made initially. But I mean, that's all. We have the benefit of hindsight to talk about that. So, yeah.
Fair enough. The biggest All Black supporter, Jade, sorry. Jane.
Yeah, afternoon, guys. Afternoon. I'm a little bit got a spring in my step this morning. First time in the Foster era that I feel that New Zealand is heading somewhere, and we can actually see the game plan that Foster's trying to install. I'm not sure if it's Foster or if it's Schmidt, but there is a game plan at least. It's not just playing on your mistakes and counter-attack rugby that we've seen, most of the time under Foster. But in overall yesterday, I think the Boks were very sloppy in that first half. Uncharacteristic mistakes, a lot of knock-ons, handling errors. I'm not sure if it was a due factor. They couldn't keep up to the pace of the game. Very concerning for me from a Springbok perspective. The Japanese-based players looked off. They couldn't match up to the pace of the game. Another concern is that, the drivers from the Sharks, a few of the Sharks guys, I'm not sure if it's a confidence thing or not, but maybe it will two or three games in, they'll get the confidence back. But you could see that, a few of the Sharks guys, it was Eben as well, weren't their normal self. From the Bok perspective, I do think, and I agree with you, they missed Eskom. I think Eskom is one of those open side flankers that is hard, and he's a typical South African type open side. From an All Blacks perspective, I must say they started well. They started strong, like Foster said in his press conference. Strong finish and a strong start. Really a strong start. I mean, 17 points up in the first 20 minutes against the Boks is a dream start. Tactical kicking was brilliant. They knew they kicked with a plan. Every kick out of hand was with a plan. We never saw that many box kicks from Aaron Smith, actually. Giving the ball back to the box when they did exit. The exit plays was brilliant, especially from kickoff time. Talia, Jody Barrett, Scott Barrett from exit time and box kicking 22 was brilliant. And the other thing that the main thing of the All Blacks is, especially in the last 20 minutes, when the Boks did come on and the Boks got back into the game, they got a foothold back in the game, the All Blacks showed patience. A lot of patience in attack. Looking at that try, Will Jordan, there wasn't any fancy passes or trying to force a pass. They showed patience. They trusted their system. They went close into contact, So I must say, very, very impressed with the All Blacks yesterday. Boks, a lot of learnings to do, but they'll get there. I think the Japanese guys just need to get up to speed of the game, and they'll get there.
Oof. Is that it? Hugh, you can jump on.
Yeah, I think Marks is the good example, isn't he, of someone who's playing out in Japan, and you'd think that he'd be straight in, but is it... Sorry, I'm going to get the names confused. Is it Malherbe who's the other hooker? Or
no, Bonambi is the other hooker.
Sorry, getting names the wrong way around. Yeah, I could be the commentator on the game, couldn't I, with Willemse and Mapimpi. That was annoying. Anyway, so I think... obviously after the game, I saw a lot of you guys who I follow on Twitter quite annoyed after the game, which is, completely understandable. We are all like that when our team loses. But I think, I said in the preview that sometimes the Boks can hammer you and the scoreboard doesn't say it. And sometimes I think New Zealand can put a big score on you and it's not as much of a hammering as the scoreline says. I think this game was really, really close. I think, obviously, the first 20 minutes from New Zealand was sensational. I think after that, the Boks shaded the game. So you guys won the second half. I think if the Colby try with the contest in the air where the TMO, it was a very, very close call. I don't blame Ben Whitehouse for not giving it, but I think it was 50-50. If he'd have given it as well, I would have had no complaints. and also when you were held up right on half-time. If either of those tries are given, or both, even in parallel universe, it's obviously a different game. Like I say, you won the second half. So I think, that first half in particular was as good a test rugby as anyone ever plays. And you guys, like I said, the scoreboard didn't show it, but you guys were rocking it at that level. I thought in the first 20 minutes at times, in the first 5 minutes, the thing that made New Zealand's tries so impressive was the fact that your defence was equally impressive. And it was just I think, Scoop, you picked up on it, the little uncertainty that Ioane gets in there when he's chasing across to support the ruck. It allows Jordan to get back up and run back across, and then he's against prop forwards running in. I think it's literally like, that's not even 1%, that's 0.5%. So so I think you can be disappointed that you didn't win, especially after all the hype before it. But it was a very, very close game, and as Vic has said, I think Twickenham in August is going to be a completely different game, completely different result. Even I was just blown away as a neutral watching it.
Cesar, your views? I mean, you were quite buoyant on Friday, confident, and obviously things probably changed after the first 20 minutes. How do you see the match?
Yeah, man. I mean, I wasn't the only one that was confident. I think half of South Africa was confident. For good reasons, I think. But something that we did not expect, or I did not expect, was just the Springboks were just slow off the mark. It's one of the it's 6 of one, half dozen of the other type thing, where it's the Springboks were slow off the mark, but the All Blacks were unbelievable off the mark. From an All Black perspective, I really, really enjoyed that first half. I really enjoyed watching them play. That dynamic kicking game that is played at breakneck speed, where they showed their superior aerial skills that they have definitely been working on and been deliberate on working on. It's bearing a lot of fruit for them, and it's a real worry for me from a Springbok perspective. If we don't sort of prepare for these sort of uppercuts that we get in tests like this, because I feel that we were jabbed a few times and we were literally knocked off kilter. We couldn't recover. Why? Because player fitness. I think a lot of our players are not match fit. Something not that I overlooked in my prediction or my pre-game sort of thinking, but I just didn't feel like a team this experience where we had quite a lot of experienced guys on the field would let that affect them as much as it affected them. I mean, we basically lost the game in the first quarter for me, and I mean, it's not a big worry, but it's just something that we should keep at the back of our minds going forward, that it is very, very possible that the All Blacks are capable of this and continue to show us that they are. Just a few reflection points in terms of, like some of the things, like I said, one of them that was very impressive for me was the dynamic kicking game, especially the aerial skills. I was very disappointed in our defense line integrity. Scott Berger was saying it a lot in commentary, and he mentioned a nice term that I like, which was the soft inside shoulders. Yeah, our guys weren't catching up, to the level that we know them to do, to cover that inside soft shoulder. And Will Jordan was literally living off that in that first 20 minutes, first half. Yeah, and it caused a lot of problem for the Springboks. And just role players. Just lastly, role players in the Springboks. Damien Dialendi, for me, very much off pace. I mean, he didn't have a bad game. I think he's one of the top carriers in the game from a Springbok perspective, and I think the top tackler in the back line. So he had a solid game, but I just think he's lacking match fitness, and I think he needs a bit more time under his belt for him to show some good form. Makazole Mapimpi, I was very disappointed in him as well. It's just, yeah, man. You know, he looked very, very vulnerable, and I think he was being targeted by the All Blacks in terms of, you know, them kicking on him. And then my prediction in terms of the back five, I just think the guys were nowhere. I mean, the first carry in the game from NZvSA, he loses he gets great momentum and then he loses the ball.
Yeah, we're gonna get to the back. We're gonna get to the forwards.
Throughout that first half, you know, our carries were very below par. Luke de Jager as well.
Yeah, we're gonna get to the forwards just now. We're gonna get to the forwards. I know you're forward. I know you are interested in forward play.
Initial thoughts.
Fantastic.
Sure.
Vuyo and Kofi, I did direct one question, or I want to direct a question to you guys regarding the backs. From my perspective, from what I've seen, obviously on the park, we did have WillemSe playing at 10, obviously interchanging with Willie Leroux in terms of attack. So Willie would come into first receiver. I noticed there's a bit of a change, or there's a bit of an attitude change when Pollard is not playing. You often get a lot of Willie Leroux coming into first five or at first receiver. Is it because there's not a lot of trust with regards to the guy you've given the number 10 jersey to, or I don't know? Is because, I mean, if WillemSe is playing 10, when I look at the game where South Africa played Australia last year, so the first game they lost, and then the second game they came guns blazing, they were attacking. WillemSe was first receiver. Even though Willie Leroux was playing at fullback, Willie Leroux would come in probably after fourth or fifth phase and then add another dynamic into the attack. But on Saturday, it was more Willie Leroux, and WillemSe was kind of hidden at the back. Going back to the testing of aerial skills, the All Blacks noticed this when the ball was turned over, and then obviously hit those aerial bombs. What's a reason behind Willie Leroux then being first receiver if WillemSe is the number 10? One of you guys can jump onto it.
I'll jump in and I'll let you guys go on it in a second. I think just from my perspective, Willie Leroux's just really good at being first receiver and a playmaker. I think having a playmaking fullback is an option that I'd really like to see Wales pursue from my point of view. And I think some other teams as well. You know, we had the kind of era where you had the second playmaker being the 12. Obviously, Dialende isn't that guy, which is fine because he's got other skills.
Yeah,
I think if you've got Willie Leroux at your disposal, using him as a playmaker, I think it is a great option, and it keeps the defence on the toes as well, because they can't just watch WillemSe. You don't have to answer this straight away. On Friday, you guys were talking about the goal kicking and the kicking from hand and things. I didn't appreciate how much of a confusion it was, and you know, it goes back to your comment, Scoop, about having confidence in the guy. You know, there's nothing in the rules that says the 10 has to kick to touch and take the goal kicks, but I think you had 3 different goal kickers and 2 different touchdown kickers in the game. That suggests to me that has it not been discussed in the lead-up?
Yeah.
That was the one thing from the box in that game that worried me, that made me think, gee, this is one area where you guys just seem, you don't
confused.
Really know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And you need a 85% plus level goal kicker in your team, and it seems like when Pollard's not around, it just goes out the window.
Yeah, 100%. Kofi?
Can I jump in there for
a
second? Yeah, man. Like I think it's for me, from a coaching perspective, and you know, I've got all the respect for the guys that are there, Ninoba, Stick, etc. I've got plenty of respect for them, but a guy like WillemSe hasn't played that much football in the URC at 10. You know, Manny Lubok is the one who's been playing at 10.
Yeah.
And all of the kicking responsibilities have been given to Manny Lubok when he plays. So when you put a guy who's been playing the majority of the season at 12 and 15 and has been tried at 10, to be honest, for his franchise and hasn't performed that well, to put him in the Springbok jumper at 10, I don't know if it was a case of experimenting as to whether there is a situation where, you've got your two top line number 10s injured and you've got him there. He played a little bit of 10 towards the end of the last championship last year. So I think they might be experimenting with him there, but I think the experiment is failing, especially against the bigger teams. And when I say bigger teams, I mean the All Blacks, potentially Ireland, etc. You need to get somebody who's settled in that position and somebody who can drive the game. I don't feel like Damian Willemse was a game driver yesterday. The game was being driven really by the 15 in Villy Leroux. And of course, most good teams in this day and age play with a dual pivot type system, two guys who are driving the game effectively. But, Willemse, I don't feel like is being given the confidence either with the kicking boot or with general play in order to do that. So what's the point for me? I don't see what the point of him, being in that position is. If he's at 12 or if he's at 15, for sure, we can look at that. But at 10, you've got to be a game driver. You've got to be moving the game forward, based on how the team needs you to play. And I don't think he was doing that. You compare that to how Villy came in and threw the ball around a little bit. He's got that skill set in his armory. And with the dominance of the forward pack, of the Springbok forward pack, you just need to pick your runners effectively and, you'll get go forward. So I don't actually think it's that much of a difficult thing to do, but I do think that it is being overcomplicated at this moment in time. And it just creates confusion amongst the guys that are playing within that system.
Yeah, Vickers, as a former backline player yourself, your thoughts? And a coach now, obviously.
I think what Kofi's talking about is spot on. For me, it all boils down to those kind of decisions are made within the week of training, because you can sort of see who's running the show at training, who's talking more at training, who's doing more directing at training, and maybe it is possible that Willemse hasn't done that at training, so which is why they would obviously be talking to Villy about taking over the role on second to third phases. For me, that's what we will never understand why it's been done, based on the fact that we're not at training. We don't see how they train, what are they doing, because ultimately for that kind of selection to be done, it's the possibility of it working and what is the guys doing at training, because that's your only reference. You can only talk about something that you've trained, that you've implemented in training. So it's possibly that it has been done at training. And again, Willemse is still finding his strides in the Springbok jersey. So if he's finding his strides in the Springbok jersey and he's been put in that role, he's not going to be the same as Pollard. He's not going to do the same as Pollard. But if you are the coaching staff and you're saying to the guy, look, we want you to play 10, give him all the roles, because that's the only way you can judge whether he's passed or not. And in this case, we're talking about Villy Leroux stepping up and playing second to third phase, coming in. How are you going to review and say, but Willemse, you were poor in the game? So that's, for me, that's one of the things that we as coaches tend to forget and tend to miss out in terms of how we're giving the young players the confidence to take the role.
Yeah, 100%. Enda, you want to jump in as well?
Yeah, just a quick one on is it, I think, Kofi, you might have just touched on it there. Is it just potentially the case that, the Springboks, they're using these games to figure out who's going to be that third or fourth man on the flight in terms of covering the 10 position? We all know Pollard's going to be fit, right? You've got Yantis, you've got Libok. Is it going to be the case that you could potentially see maybe Libok or Yantis, excuse me for the pronunciation, by the way, could it be the case that he'll cover maybe one of those, and one of those won't make it to the World Cup squad, and that's what they're trying to build, that depth, and they maybe want to have a different squad member in there instead? Could that be something like so? The reason they're picking Willemse is just to see if he can stand in, and then they can maybe not bring someone like Libok, which I think would be a shame, because Libok's been in great form, especially in the URC. Just wondering what you guys think about that.
Yeah, I think someone's definitely going to miss out. There's no doubt about it. And I mean, that's just part of the game. It's part of the makeup of, high performance playing. I do think that there are guys yesterday that I feel, because there's so few games to go, actually played themselves out potentially of the World Cup squad, based on that first half alone. Now, I know that guys are, you go based on trust and you go based on, what guys can do. But like you said, or like somebody else earlier said, if you can't kick at 85% and you can't basically dictate the game the way that the coaches and the way that your team needs it to happen, I don't think you're shooting yourself in the foot. And I don't think Damien will be looked at as a 10 anymore. I think he'll be looked at as a 15 and probably a 12 and maybe a third or fourth choice backup 10. I mean, Faf, I don't remember the last time Faf was kicking consistently. I'm not talking about his percentage, I'm talking about kicking for goal. I don't remember the last time Faf was kicking for goal. And then Colby, who isn't a recognized goal kicker, was then also kicking for goal afterwards. So it speaks a lot about the trust that they have and the confidence that he has either in himself or what the coaches have in him.
Oof, tough. Jade?
Yeah, so I want to touch on this based South Africa. So we're going with a 6-2 split, right? And it's something that we've been going on for a while, is the 6-2 split, and it is a big strength of ours. I mean, it worked yesterday. South Africa got back into the game through the 6-2 split. Now, you can't have Libok, who just plays 10, on the bench. You can't. Then you're going to have another back that can play 9, and he can play 12, 13, You're going to have to really shuffle your backline and have a lot of utility backs. So, in terms of the flow of the first five, the old school rule of the first five is he's your quarterback. Your first five and your captain plays whole game. They're your drivers, they should play whole game. You base your game around them. You see it with Ntamak, you've seen it now with Mwanga, you've seen it around the world, with Court and everybody. So I think the confidence from the box is that Pollard is the man. Pollard will drive this team. However, why they're trying Willem say 10 is because of the 6-2 split. They need him on the bench. Ideally, he won't come on to replace Pollard in case instead it's an injury. It most likely end up at 12 or 15. But you need to have Willemse on the bench. So that's why the 6-2 split is going on.
No, 100%. Well said.
That's a great point.
Yeah, very, very, very good point. Now moving into that forward pack, Sisa, I know you're a former forward yourself. You've played at the highest level. In terms of front row, how happy are you with the type of front row that started and the type of front row that came on from the bench, from the Springbok side, and also looking at the All Blacks, how they managed their substitutions in terms of the third and final quarter of the game?
Listen, I'm very happy with the Springbok group of front rows, right? It's very experienced, very good players, also quite different from each other as well, which helps, I think. In terms of the guys that started, like I said, they were very slow off the mark. They were very much under pressure. I think Frans Maherbe was under immense pressure from De Groot, and we all saw that. He handled himself well in a lot of the cases, but De Groot obviously gave the All Blacks a lot of stability for them to mount their attack. I was very impressed with Ethan De Groot. Very, very impressed. I think he had a very solid game. In terms of the guys that came on from a South African perspective, I mean, we all saw it. The difference they made. They brought edge, or they brought edge into the game. They brought momentum into the game. I think everyone's going to cry for Malcolm Marx to start more games and play for longer for the next few weeks. So, I mean, listen, he's earned that opinion. I think out of all these Japanese players, I think he's showing his class, that it doesn't really matter where he plays as long as he does play. He was very impressive, and I was also impressed by the effort that the other two guys, Thomas as well as what's his name, Mr. Incredible, I just forget his name.
Koch.
Yeah, that they brought onto the second half. So, but in terms of the pack itself, both packs, definitely New Zealand outplayed us. I mean, listen, I made a call, which I still stand by the way. Shannon Frizzell had an amazing game. Especially that first 20 minutes, he did sort of fall back into his normal game after that hell bent 20 minutes. But they definitely had an edge over us. I was kind of disappointed in number 8 from New Zealand. I also now forget his name
Severe
for some reason. He was kind of quiet in the game, but he did what he had to. And he got his team over the line. Very disappointing was that back five that I was speaking of. I was expecting more. I think we got more answers answered. We got more answers from a Mostert perspective. Listen, from him, I wanted him to give me a solid 40 minutes, solid 60 minutes for Dwayne or Peter Steph to come on. But he was very disappointing for me. He never settled in the game. Yes, he gave us great options in the lineup, but we didn't even contest in the lineup, which is another thing that confused me a bit. Because his major strength is that, and that's why he is in the team. But I don't know, guys. It was a very disappointing and static performance from the Springbok forwards.
Speaking of the forward pack, should have Eben started this game? Looking at performance now, I understand obviously he had a very difficult week. And obviously he made the choice of wanting to start. But as a coach now, in a situation of this magnitude, in a game of this magnitude, yes, it's a risk. Obviously, if it pays off, we would look at this in a different light. If it doesn't pay off, you look at it in a different light as well. But I think you want to jump in here. I mean, looking at his performance in the game,
ask Talaya whether he thinks NZvSA
He made a big hit. No, definitely he made a big hit. Yeah. But I mean, in terms of influence, it's a very experienced player. Jade spoke about Sharks players as well in this game that were kind of off the pace in some way, to some degree. And also, I want to ask the same question now. Not moving away from Itzabeth per se, but like coming from a team that doesn't perform well as well in a provincial tournament, etc. Like, for example, the Auckland Blues didn't perform well, but their players are playing quite well, decently for the All Blacks. But the Sharks players aren't really getting to their strides yet. Vuyo, you want to jump in here? And then Sisa after that.
Yeah, so I'll just touch on the Itzabeth situation. I think for me, I've always made it a rule as a coach that when there's that kind of situation where there's grief or there's a bad news from family side, I've always said don't allow the player to play, because it's two things. Emotionally, they're not stable, and then secondly, as much as they wanted to do it, again, it's almost like they are distracted mentally. Why I'm saying this is because we all know you perform at your peak at your happiest moments. You perform at your peak at your comfortable moments in life. When you're going through something tough, it's very hard to perform. Why is it very hard to perform? Because you mentally, your mind is not at where it's supposed to be. So, which is why I've always made it a rule that rather give them time off, give the player off. I would have rather said, if I was in that kind of situation as a coach, I would have rather said, send the guy home, let him spend time with his family. Bro, you're going to start against Argentina, and you're going to be the captain against Argentina. And once we do that, you're almost telling him that, look, you will start you will be captain against Argentina. So that's then you can play for your father, because then by then He would have been late. He would have been late. It would have been a couple of a week or a week and a half of just not thinking about rugby, just focusing on his family. And then you ask him to obviously step up against Argentina. So that's just how I feel about the situation. But I mean, a lot of people have different opinions about it.
100%. Sisa, then Kofi after.
Yeah, I'll be very quick. I think from a Springbok camp perspective, Springbok management perspective, they were tossed in a very difficult situation where this guy, who is an influential character and a role player within the team and a leader within the team, needs game time, and they need obviously to see him as well in a very important year, right? From a personal perspective, my perspective, I personally wouldn't have played him. Like I definitely agree with what we were saying. I would have probably said that he must go home and take some time off, and then we re-engage when they are done and we are going to face Argentina. But yeah, it's a very tough call. But from a rugby perspective and a Springbok management perspective, I understand why he ended up starting or playing. Sorry.
Yeah, Kofi.
Nah, the guys have touched on it. No need for me to
Your hand was up the whole time. No, fair enough. And I want to come back to you now, and Jade, if you guys can share, obviously, your thoughts in terms of the backs of the All Blacks, and obviously the defensive aspects of their game as well. What are the most improved aspects that you've seen from New Zealand in the past? Maybe let's say last year playing against Ireland, and then end of the year tour, to what we saw in the last 2 weeks, Argentina last week, and then the Springboks this weekend.
I think we've kind of, well, what's interesting really with the team, especially that started yesterday, was that I don't know if we all would have predicted that team. Like, are we sure? I think everybody would say that Moanga should be the starting 10. Some would say maybe Bowden should be. Actually, I don't know. But I think this is going to be their settled backline. I think this would be the backline that they put out in the opening game of the World Cup, to be honest. And I just think they just know what they're doing. And I think somebody touched on it earlier. They're not just living off scraps or living off mistakes. They're actually, and again, this is where you start to see the Joe Schmidt influence on the team, where they're starting to pull off more moves. Now, obviously, all this has helped, and I've said this before in previous sessions, that it is all built on what the pack do for you up front. But I do think we're going to start to see more of that, just more set plays, just more kind of thought behind what they're doing in terms of moves. Because, again, when Joe Schmidt was in charge of Ireland, he was so smart at analysing the opposition and coming up with moves based on what the opposition were weak at, or based at, he would, and like the word in the street is that Joe Schmidt was just obsessed with looking at clips of the opposition players. So he really looks out for weaknesses. So I think that's what we're really going to start to see, and that's what we are starting to see now in the last couple of weeks. And I think that's really exciting, and it's frightening, I think, for other teams. But for me, those would be the standouts.
Nice. Jade, before you start, Jade, just want to also add another element to the same question. It's the same question. Remember 2008, 2009, I think, the All Blacks were kind of struggling on aerial skills, and they had to bring in, who's this guy from the Hurricanes now on the wing?
Corey
Jane. Because Sivivatu, Joe Rokotoko were really struggling, and Peter de Villiers and his coaching staff really targeted those areas. But now, fast forward to 2023, Talea and Jordan have now really asserted themselves in those in that aerial department. I mean, are we seeing the similarities between that era and currently now, basically kind of finding their feet and their rhythm under Fozzie and Schmidt and Jason Ryan?
Well, it's difficult to really say you are, because, I mean, if you look at the similarities between all of the right wings, bar Talia, I mean, Narawa and Will Jordan are very similar in terms that they have a kicking game as well. So they have a kicking game as well, and that helps them, especially in the aerial aspect. Then we do have, if you're looking at this, the way that is in Super Rugby, in Super Rugby we have a lot of kicking, but the kicking game is not so much kicking the ball away. It's contestable kicks. If you look at the way New Zealand teams play derbies, it's very contestable kicks. And that's important. The other thing, if you're looking at the defense from New Zealand, a concerning thing for me is they're still not getting a lot of turnovers at breakdown. They are still, I think they're way behind in terms of turnovers. South Africa never had any line breaks really yesterday, and hence they got into New Zealand's 22 just by brute force, slow poison, getting first one-off runners sometimes, then sometimes playing it out of the back, but getting again a pod wider. But it was straight man on running, and they did hurt New Zealand at times, although I do think New Zealand's defense was well. But if you look at the overall aspect that Scott McLeod needs to look at, he conceded 5 tries in 2 games. Is that a good defense if you want the World Cup? I think there's still a lot of work to be done there.
Yeah.
The other thing is, if we just look at it as well, last thing I want to touch on, to add on everybody, and just put this impressive stat. So New Zealand's top tackler was Shannon Fritzell with 14 tackles.
Yep.
The next top tackler in the game was Peter Steptoe with 13 tackles. So who is
Off the
arguably
bench.
one of the best blindsides in the world?
Off the bench, imagine.
Off the bench.
Jeepers. That's insane. But yeah, it also goes to show, how much possession you've had as well, right? At the end of the day, because if you don't have a possession, you're obviously going to make a lot of tackles within the game itself. All right, cool. Now moving on to Mr. Eddie Jones, Michael Cheika, big surprise. Hugh, I'm going to start off with you on this one. Honeymoon, Eddie Jones, is it over? Because now that he is 0-2 currently.
Did it ever start? I think, I hear what you're saying about big surprise, but I think we called it on Friday. We said Argentina are better away from home. I think a few of the guys on the space said that. I think Ender said that it was going to be a poor quality game, which it was, in my opinion. And we said that Australia are conceding too many tries. I wonder if it's just because I've done so much research and so much looking at the statistics for Australia recently, and all Australian teams, the Super Rugby teams, and even the Under-20s team. There's almost kind of nothing really I've got left to say that I haven't said already. These guys concede a crazy amount of tries. Like, they scored 31 points at home in a test match and didn't win. Like, do you realise how rare that is, how unusual it is? There's something like 7% of test matches, both teams score over 30%. Both teams score over 30 points. Australia have been in test matches where both teams scored over 33 times in the last 12 months. It's crazy. And even when, Marky Mark, I think it was, intercepted at the end, and it looked like he'd won it. As a Wales fan, I was getting flashbacks to Curtly Beale against us in Cardiff. I don't think I'll ever get over that. But that would have been a smash and grab for Australia, and that's on their home turf. If you look at the stats of the game, Argentina dominated possession by a long way. Australia made 200 tackles, which that might sound like they've got a good defence, 200 tackles, but they still conceded 4 tries. Argentina's attack, I think Argentina will feel like they left 2 or 3 tries out there, maybe. Yeah. There was one in particular in the second half where everyone had their head in their hands going, how have they not scored there? It was unbelievable. I think Eddie Jones has told the All Blacks to watch out. I don't know, is he telling the scoreboard guy to watch out? You're going to need more bigger numbers. So I think I've got nothing left to say on Eddie Jones in Australia. If Eddie's got some kind of master plan for the World Cup, it's a hell of a plan, because he's got us all fooled right now. Yeah,
fair, 100%. Vuyo, you wanted to jump in on the Aussies?
No, I just wanted to touch on what you was talking about. There's nothing we've seen from Australia, and for me, if he's telling the All Blacks to watch out, he probably should be getting in a defense coach today and trying to find a high-profile defense coach to come and work with the team for 2 weeks. Otherwise, it's going downhill. I can't see anything Australia is doing because when the other team has the ball, they gain meters. And it makes sense why South Africa with their strong ball carriers who were gaining so much momentum.
Yeah.
2 phases. You on your 22, you on the 10, you on the other 10, you on the 22. That's 4 phases. So you can't, there's no way, not in international rugby. And I think he really has to look at what resources he has within his management and find a very high-profile defense coach fast.
Yeah.
That is something that Eddie Jones has struggled with, though, when he was at England. Like, defence coaches not as much, but backs coaches and attack coaches, they were, like, leaving after 6 months. He must have gone through 7 or 8 different backs or attack coaches in his time in England, where they would all up and leave after one Six Nations or one summer tour. So, yeah, again, is this all part of Eddie's grand plan? Because it's not like any kind of grand plan I've ever seen.
We need to get Squidge Rugby onto this conversation as well.
Yeah, I was worried that Squidge Rugby was going to unfollow me after slagging off Eddie, but unfortunately he hasn't.
Kofi, Hugh touched on one point which I also kind of thought about in terms of what we saw in his last days or last weeks of the end of the year tour in Eddie's coaching. And obviously what transpired in England, he was kind of losing the plot in a way. He kind of lost, or not kind of, he lost to Argentina in the first game at the end of the year. He was kind of embarrassed for 70 minutes by the All Blacks. Obviously, his job was saved basically by the comeback. And then the following week, he was embarrassed by the Springboks. And now we're seeing a similar pattern within the Australian, the Wallabies side as well. Is this the end? I mean, is this his last hurrah, basically?
Guys, it's only been 2 games. Come on.
Yeah, but I'm taking it back from the end of the year tour. As a coach.
Yeah, I mean, at some point you do, as a coach, you find very few coaches who are very good at kind of like getting better and learning more as they go and kind of changing things as they go. And I think this is what coaching is very much about, being humble as well, knowing exactly what you're good at, knowing what you're not good at. And I do feel like, humility is not necessarily Eddie's strong point. Also, in terms of like the amount of coaches that Eddie's gone through, 100% on that, but also it's the caliber of coach. Like, when John Mitchell quit, that sparked like a whole lot of thoughts on my side. John Mitchell is a very tough nut to crack. He's a tough nut on tough nuts, and for him to be like, hey dog, I think I'm out, I'm not keen anymore.
Yeah,
I think that was a big one. In terms of the style of play, I think it also puts into context how well Dave Rennie was doing. And at this point in time, I mean, I watched Australia against Argentina yesterday, begrudgingly, because that's generally when I go do my groceries. It wasn't they made it sound exciting. It wasn't a good game of rugby. I mean, with penalty advantage, 10 meters out, 15 meters out, the RGs were kicking the ball, kind of like hoping that they'd get something out of it. There wasn't really like anything, to write home about, to be quite honest. So I think from both teams, one, they're lacking players, they're lacking quality. And then also secondly, you also have got to make sure that you're building systems around the type of players to improve them, to improve their decision making, to ensure that they've got, the right things happening in and around what they're doing. So I'm not completely convinced that Eddie is done for, but I do think time is not on his hands because of, the World Cup beckoning. I still think there is a quality coach in there. I think there's definitely somebody who's got plenty of knowledge. I mean, we all know the influence he had in 2007 in South Africa winning the World Cup then. We all know the influence that he had with Japan. We all knew the influence that he had with England going all the way to the final. So I think there's still a good coach there. I think the quality of players just isn't good enough from Australia. They just aren't there. And that's evidenced also by their Super Rugby results as well.
Fair.
But getting guys like Quade Cooper, playing in Japan at 30, 34. How old is Quaid now? 35, 34.
Somewhere around there.
35.
Somewhere there. Where you've got younger guys like Noah Lolesio, you've got younger guys
Carter
like Carter
Gordon.
Gordon. These are the guys that should be playing. These are the guys that should be, making a running for this World Cup. These are guys that have been playing Super Rugby for the last 3 years. So, not to go on too long about it, but I think the players that he's got there, he can't rely too much on the old guys because the old guys are not going to give him any juice.
Jade and then Vuyo.
Yeah, so I just wanted to mention this based on Australia. So you have Eddie Jones that came in with a lot of, how can I say, bad form as a coach, okay? But that was a different team. And then he's coaching a bunch of guys that's getting 50s and 40s every day, every game against them in Super Rugby. The squad is not, they need to win. They need to win a game to get some confidence somewhere. Because you can see their heads are dropped. You can see it. I mean, if you look at Australian teams, when they're at their best is when they're winning games. And you can see the flair. I mean, you looked at Marky Markma, Nawan Tawasi yesterday.
Yeah.
And you see him yesterday, he's the only one playing with confidence. He's the only one playing with no fear, not worried of getting, a big score against him. He's the only one that's jamming. Australia needs confidence. I'm not sure if they're going to get it 50 days to go to the World Cup, but that's the big problem with Australia. They have no confidence.
Vickers.
No, I just wanted to pose a question to the group. I mean, if you look at the number 10 jersey for Australia, that's always been a problem ever since. I mean, a lot of people will rate Bernard Foley, but I've never rated him.
Iceman.
Yeah, he's Mr. Ice for me, but I've never rated him as a when you look at the 10s that are going around. I mean, we're talking special players. When you look at Australia, they're 10s. I mean, Cooper is nowhere. They're 15, nowhere. And those are the most important positions we discuss in the space. We're talking about Damien Willemse. We're talking about Willie Leroux. We're talking about Bowden Barrett. We're talking about Moanga. And you look at Australia's 10 and 15 combination, and you're like, what are they doing? What's happening in that country in terms of those positions?
Yeah, massive issues.
They'll be there. Given a few years, Carter Gordon and Joseph Saili, they will be the two against the Lions.
Just on Cooper as well, I'm not sure why he's selected. Like, he is a running fly half as well, and that's not Eddie Jones' style as well. That's what I find quite baffling about his decision. But maybe on that point, it's just because there is nobody else within Australian rugby. I don't know, like, who can step up to the plate. So I just find it strange that he's a running fly half, in my opinion.
Was Foley playing for the AA side against Tonga?
Yeah, he played on Saturday.
He played.
It's crazy. These are players that Australia have already dropped for not being good enough, and now they're back in because there's nobody else. It's crazy.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, player personnel is a big issue. Just to close off, gents, thank you very much. Eddie Jones said one thing that basically stuck with me post-match regarding what he's trying to do and trying to implement in terms of design, architecture, game plan, philosophy. He alluded to the fact that coaching Australia currently is like having one of your old cars, a Datsun 400, he mentioned. So if you're trying to fix a gearbox this week, then next week the brakes aren't working, and you try and fix the brakes next week, then the engine is faulty the other week. So he's kind of stuck in a situation where he's trying to put everything together, assemble a car that's going to be fully operational, but there's issues week in, week out. So that's something that we kind of also have to think about. Enda, you want to jump in there?
No, just, again, for me, it comes back to decision. I really don't understand why Rennie was replaced. With this amount of prep before a World Cup, I just think it was absolutely crazy to put him in there, to put Jones in there. He has no time to build a style of play, in my opinion. So I just think it's absolutely baffling. And I don't think we're going to see much of him as a result.
Fair enough. Cesar, you want to close off?
No. Everyone said how I feel about Australia right now. But yeah, that last point there, very, very valid. Dave Rennie was wrong and and maybe, made mistakes in a lot of things, but I don't think he deserved to be dropped at a year out from the World Cup. And now Australia's put themselves in a position where literally there's no getting out of this hole. Eddie Jones is in a hole, and I'd love to see how he's going to get out of it.
Okay, you can close us off there, Hugh.
Yeah, just quickly, we're talking about this game. We haven't mentioned Argentina at all.
0.
Then they won the game.
0.
Did anybody think that Argentina were particularly good? I didn't. I wasn't that impressed with them. They had a lot of ball, and there wasn't much deception in their attack. The backs were receiving the ball from a standing start. Do you think Argentina were much better from the All Blacks game, or do you think it was just Australia? It was all about Australia being bad.
Those are two bad teams playing against each other.
I think simply put,
those are two very, very average teams. What are they rated? 7th and 8th in the world? 8th and 9th in the world? Those are two extremely average teams playing against each other. I mean, I remember I haven't in the last 10 years. Who are the hookers been? Montoya and Creevy. It's still the same guys. I think I saw Nico Sanchez, who I haven't seen play proper rugby since 2016, 2017 maybe, for the Jaguares. And 5 years, 6 years later, he's the reserve 10, if I'm not mistaken. There's Checo will rile them up and they'll be emotional, guys will cry. But the reality is that when it comes to deception, when it comes to effective running rugby, attacking rugby, etc., they're not going to have that. And Australia were exactly the same. They really didn't have that. The old dogs like Quade Cooper, they don't have the footwork that they used to have. Yes, they've got the passing ability. Maybe the mind is still there, but the body isn't. I think there was a situation where Karevi scored. Quade had a one-on-one. I expected him to finish, knowing Quade. He got tackled, he had to offload, and I was like, maybe it's time. His kicking game is good, but maybe you should be looking at younger guys that can put opportunities like that to bed. And just one more thing from my side. Sorry, going back to the SA game. I know we went 20-25 minutes since we spoke about it. When SA started playing well, we saw them with ball in hand. And when they have ball in hand with their big guys, they can offload the ball. They can play around with the ball. You've got Archie Snyman, you've got Peter Steph Toy. These are guys that can go over the gain line. And I think that's why the likes of Vili look so good also, because you're hitting big ball carriers on the outside shoulder that are finding those soft shoulders, soft targets, and it's allowing them to go forward instead of kicking the ball all of the time. New Zealand have got a very passive defensive structure. And with that passive defensive structure, you're always going to make meters. When Kobe scored his try, I think it was on 6th phase or 7th phase, and they had actually attacked from the 40 meter. To make 40 meters in 7 phases in international rugby, that's actually quite special. And so
I'm not happy.
In the next 10 days, they're looking to do something similar. Sorry to go back, but that's my closing remark.
No worries. I'm not happy with Talia, though. 2 of those tries was him shooting up by himself instead of just being patient and allowing the box to actually pass the ball. And obviously the defense would have been more aligned in that aspect. So those 2 tries by the...
You've got to make a decision, though.
Not fair, but I've got numbers on the inside that are watching, that are ready. So I can't just shoot by myself.
Up and shift, or are we talking about looking at where the threat might be and attacking where that threat is in terms of defense?
There was literally a 3-on-4. I don't think the Springboks were going to score in that perspective, especially on the Kobe side, even though that ball was a forward pass. I don't see Springboks scoring if Talia doesn't shoot up. In all honesty. If you can rewatch that phase play, I don't see Springboks scoring in that corner if Talia doesn't shoot up. Vili Leroux, well spotted. As soon as Talia shoots up, he skips over him, Kobe scores. He had 2 forwards next to him. I don't see any threat. And you had Jordy Barrett and someone else on the inside that were very much capable of defending against those Springbok forwards. And Talia decides, what? Now I'm going to shoot up. And then once he shot up...
something that's being coached to the wingers these days as well. So
which is horrible.
I think...
Yeah, but then you need to be like a Lucanio arm to shoot up, I believe. Read the play.
But Mapimpi shot up when Will Jordan made that break.
Oh.
You know that?
Yeah, I saw Mapimpi shooting up. Yeah.
Gordon Barrett threw that ball over the top. Will Jordan got it. Obviously, he got tackled by Vinny. He picked it up quickly, went again. But that space wouldn't have been created. So he basically made a decision on where the ball was going as the ball was in the air. You know? So I think wingers are being coached to do that, to stop the immediate threat. And then...
But if the ball hasn't moved, why are we jumping up?
On the outside.
If the ball hasn't moved, why are we jumping up?
I get. You've got to ask them.
Story for another day. Gentlemen, thank you very much. And thank you very much to our listeners. We're not gonna have a preview this coming Friday. So we'll have a nice gentle talk on Sunday to kind of build it up into next week. Big weekend next weekend. Bledisloe Cup. And obviously Argentina are planning to surprise the Springboks on home soil. Right, gents, enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Thank you very much.
No channel Gazelle apology for you.
It's one of the best games I've seen him play ever. You heard me speak about him, bro.
Thanks once again, gents. Thanks to the listeners. See you guys next week, Sunday.
Cheers, guys.
Have a good evening, gents.
Great weekend. Cheers. Bye.
Cheers,
Thanks, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.
The heat is on.